We'll share a little bit today about our story. And again, just looking forward to communicating and innovating with all of you today, and get down to the next screen here. There we go. Okay. Very first photo I wanted to share, a very special photo to us. In the photo is a girl named Flor, and she comes from a very mountainous, remote, rural area of Peru. And one of the reasons that we're so excited about Flor is, and then get to the next screen here. And so this next screen is just it's one of my favorite photos from Free Wheelchair Mission. And this just tells a lot about our story. And one of the things it tells is, you'll see Flor, who's in the first photo, she was being carried by her mom, and she lives with a disability, and so she doesn't have mobility and unable to get around on her own. And her mom was carrying her around, and she needed to carry her pretty much everywhere she needed to go. You can see her in this photo sitting in a wheelchair, and this was her very first and brand new wheelchair. And she's just so excited and singing and clapping, and her family's there. Her mom's in the back, and her dad, and the whole community came around. And the other exciting part about this is the gentleman on the left, he's celebrating as well, and that's our founder, Don Schoendorfer. And he's celebrating because this was Free Wheelchair Mission's 1 millionth wheelchair that we were able to deliver, and it went again to Flor. And so when this happens, it just transforms the person's life. And so now Flor is able to go to school and get around on her own and have independence. And it just delivers so many things. Her mom is going to be more free now, and she's mom's very strong for carrying around, and Flor, being to be a big girl, and so now they're going to have more independence as a family and just be able to go out and play with friends. And this one photo kind of just tells a big part of the story of Free Wheelchair Mission. And again, and Don celebrating the 1 millionth wheelchair in this photo, and this is a couple of years ago now, and we're now up to 1.3 million wheelchairs we've been able to distribute. And so we're really excited about that. And so the story started, though, with Don, with his wife, on a trip to Morocco, and a trip to Africa. And they saw a woman, like the woman in the photo you see here, crawling on the ground. And she was crawling in the dirt. It was across a dirt road. People were kicking up dust as they walked by her. Not many people noticed. Some people might notice and try to give a hand. But it really struck Don and his wife. And it's something we don't see very often here. It's something that we're probably not very familiar with in the developing world. But unfortunately, it's far too common. And this really hit Don. And he began to think about it for over many years. And being the MIT trained PhD in engineering, biomechanical engineering as he was, he thought that somebody should think about this and do about it and do something about it. And he began to research this problem and discovered it actually is a very, very big problem, an issue in that 75 million people around the world need a wheelchair. And he was shocked to find this out. And I was shocked when I first found this out, and I didn't know about this until very recently, a few years ago. And so if you think about this, the way to put this in some perspective is, it's almost as if the entire population of Germany had no mobility. Just imagine that for a second. No one being able to get around. That's how big 75 million is, or the entire country of Thailand, or the entire country of the United Kingdom, or countries in the United Kingdom. 75 million people without mobility, and no means to get mobility, no means to get a wheelchair. And so again, Don saw this and felt called to do something about it. And being the engineer that he is, and like many stories that you might have heard of Google and Apple starting in a garage with an engineer or engineers, our story is similar, where Don got out in his garage and created some prototypes. And he put together some mountain bike wheels because he knew that those could handle the rugged terrain of the environments that these folks are living in. And he also used this white resin lawn chair that you might see in Home Depot, and he put them together, and he came up with this amazing design for a durable, long-lasting, comfortable, affordable wheelchair. At the time, for less than $50, they're still less than $100 even today. But in today's world, wheelchairs here in the developed world are hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars, and even up into the tens of thousands of dollars. So the people living in these developing countries just can't afford them. So he came up with this amazing and ingenious invention. He tested it. He built some more. He built 100. He kept them in his garage, and he started finding ways to distribute them. He distributed a few in India, and word spread. And people just heard about this amazing creation and that Don came up with. And so the rest, as they say, is history. And so 20 years now on, we now have multiple versions of the wheelchair. And so the original wheelchair is actually retired now, but it was an amazing design that lasted for many years in our production. We now have what we call that was Gen 1, and we have a Generation 2, and we have a Generation 3 wheelchair. And Generation 3 actually collapses in multiple sizes, and so many new innovations we've made over the years, so that we now have a fleet, if you will, of wheelchairs, although very affordable, very rugged, and they can handle the dust and dirt and sand and water and rain in these places these communities where they don't have the infrastructure and the support that we have here in the United States. We have a test track that was donated actually by a donor in our headquarters here in Southern California, in Irvine, California, where Don and the engineering team get to test out new designs and improvements and make things last longer. Our factory's in Asia, a very sophisticated factory, and we're able to produce in pretty high volume to get those wheelchairs out. We distribute them through containers, shipping containers. About 510 wheelchairs can fit in each container, and those go out to all the countries we serve. And so we've been in 94 countries now, and distributing wheelchairs and through partners. And so we have partnerships with organizations like Food for the Hungry and Food for the Poor and Metanoia Missions, World Vision. These are all our partners, are our hands and feet, and they're our distribution channel, if you will, and we rely on them so much, and they've been so successful in this model because it would be very difficult for us to staff up, and so we train and we equip all of these partners who are already on the ground in many of these places, many of these countries around the world. And so we send them to them, once they get to the ports, they come in trucks usually. They're all, in parts, and they assemble them. And a lot of times it's volunteers. A lot of times it's the partners themselves and their staff assemble the wheelchairs, put them out. And sometimes there are larger distributions and groups, and sometimes there's smaller distributions of the wheelchairs. In fact, during COVID, a lot of times they may even have to go door to door to distribute to make sure things are safe. And we've safely been able to continue to distribute during the pandemic. In fact, this is a photo of a distribution of wheelchairs to these recipients in Haiti, 5 days after that devastating earthquake hit Haiti just last month. We were able to get wheelchairs through one of our partners there in Haiti. And once they get their wheelchairs and they're all trained, and their family members and caregivers are trained on the proper use of them, like this quote unquote happy customer here, they're off and running and off and rolling, I should say, with their wheelchairs. And so it's an exciting process. Lives are transformed. People are able to go to school. People are able to go to work. They're able to be more independent. They, just have so many more opportunities for the future. Like this girl here who can now probably go to school because she has the mobility that's provided by the gift of wheelchairs. All of this is made possible through one thing that everybody on this call is very well aware of, and that's visual storytelling. And I'll go through the reason for that, but that really is what powers all of that transformation that you just saw. And so we get videos and stories and photos, obviously, through our partners primarily. So because they're our hands and feet and they're distributing the wheelchairs, they take the photos often, they take the videos often. And we use that for our marketing materials and media and social media and all the things that we produce for campaigns and events that we have to raise money, that help us raise money. And through those funds, we're able to distribute more wheelchairs. And so, that's really what powers everything that you're seeing. These stories of transformation, they actually transform in many ways those who hear and see these stories again for the first time. Don was transformed, his life was transformed, seeing the woman crawling on the ground. And each time we distribute a wheelchair, it's just so impactful for those who get to that privilege and just blessing to be able to witness it and see it, whether it's on video or whether it's in person, like some of our supporters get a chance to do sometimes. And because they're transformed, they want to help us. They want to raise money. And then there are more wheelchairs distributed, and then more, stories, essentially. We've had 1.3 million stories, so to speak, of lives being transformed from those wheelchairs that we've distributed. And so this is what we like to call dual transformation, where there's a transformation of the person's life, the person living with disabilities. They just have so many new opportunities, and the people who get to share in that and help make that happen, their lives are often very transformed as well. And that makes possible what we do. One of the things I mentioned is that most of our partners they're in the business of providing water or food or medicine or clothing or jobs or opportunity, working with those communities on the ground. Some of them are medical professionals. Some of them are physical therapists. Some of them are volunteers, staff members. They are not professional photographers in most cases. Some of them are, and some bigger nonprofits occasionally have on staff photographers, videographers who are there in the field with them. Many of them don't, and most of our partners don't. So though we just really value what they give back to us. And so we work in many ways to help train them on ways to get those stories and those photos. And so some of the things we do, our programs team working with our partners provide just amazing training materials, mainly on identifying people with disabilities who are good candidates for wheelchairs, how to put together the wheelchairs, how to make sure they're safe, how to distribute them, provide information, all the things around identifying and providing the wheelchairs to the people who need them. But then also, again, collecting that information on just information that we need to make sure that the wheelchairs are properly put together and that they last a long time and answer any questions, but also to provide this content, which we in marketing obviously love. And so they are training, and they provide online training, especially during COVID. In the past, we used to be able to do in-person training, but a lot of that is happening online now. And these screenshots don't really do it justice. It's a really nice program that they put together for training. We also have this thing we call the Wheelhouse, aptly named, training for partners, and we've had one recently where it was about getting quality photos and training our partners. And because one of the issues we see, we get photos sometimes, but sometimes the resolution isn't very good, or the framing, or the focus, or the lighting, all of these things. And so actually doing it in English and Spanish. I actually don't speak Spanish, but I have somebody on staff who helps translate for me, but we've done them in Spanish. We do things like walk them through how to prepare for a shoot and getting a shot list and packing the right equipment and what makes a good photo, what makes what's not a good photo. And so we've gone through these trainings with over 150 of our partner members just in the last 2 weeks. And it's just been amazing. They're hungry for this information. They really want to tell these stories because there's only so many that we can tell. I'd love to share stories with you all day, and they get to see, and again, privileged to see some of these recipients and what just happens when they're off the ground and into a wheelchair. Many times after waiting years sometimes for a wheelchair, what happens? And so we just love talking to them, helping them, and they're so excited about this. And so now we have this army of photographers out there who are ready and willing and ready to go to help us get this content. And so that's been an amazing experience. And one of the things we've learned, we asked this poll question during the sessions, is what camera do you use? What file transfer service are you using? Things like that. And maybe some of you are surprised, maybe you're not, and don't, professional photographers out there don't cringe or anything, but most of them are smartphones, and that's just what they have available, right, to them. A lot of smartphones, as you know, have very good resolution these days, and iPhones and Androids now. WhatsApp is one of their more common ways to distribute photos. Forget WeTransfer or Dropbox or these other things. Some of them do use those, but it's WhatsApp. And sometimes we find there's problems and resolution gets reduced. It might be a great high resolution photo, even on their camera, and then they try to transfer it and they might do it the wrong way through WhatsApp, and we get on the other end a low resolution photo back that could have been amazing. And so many of these photos we get they're just this far away from greatness. And there's an issue like that, or it's out of focus or things like that. So it's been an amazing experience working with, again, this army of photographers now that we have out there and storytellers. And it's not just photography, it's also getting the actual stories of the wheelchair recipients and their lives before and after and all of that, and also video as well. But the results, from both our partners and sometimes our staff, and occasionally we do hire, I want to make it clear, we do hire professional photographers and videographers. We do, and sometimes our partners do. But geez, some of the photos, we have are just amazing. And when I look through these and I hear these stories, difficult for me because sometimes I can't get through them because I know some of the stories behind some of them get a little emotional. So forgive me if I do, but these are just amazing photos from around the world and all the countries we serve. And we get these out through, like I said, social media, print media, video, and through either just newsletter campaigns or fundraising campaigns or just awareness. And a lot of these photos we get out, and just we have thousands, and it's been over 20 years now of collecting some of these amazing stories and photos, and we love to get more, and that's part of what we're doing right now. One of the other challenges I want to highlight, though, is not only are they not trained as photographers, mostly, but it's also a challenge both to distribute the wheelchairs and to get the content, get the photos, and get the stories, and get the video. Because if you've ever traveled, you know it's difficult sometimes. Make sure you have to have the camera charged in multiple versions and all these things. But there's often not electricity, and it's very difficult to get to some of these locations. You know, our wheelchairs sometimes are distributed on backs of cars. So this is a taxi. Our Generation 3 can actually fold up, and you can fit it into a taxi. You can put them on top of cars and vehicles. This is an interesting one. Just looks like, you know, some kind of cart that they put together or built. Boats is very common when there are places that are only accessible by boat. That's how we distribute wheelchairs. In fact, this is the distribution from our partners in Haiti. Because of the earthquake, a lot of the infrastructure and roads were blocked right after the earthquake in Haiti. And so the only way we could get wheelchairs in, and again, through our partners, they were really fast in responding. And because in earthquakes, you can imagine, unfortunately, because of the collapse of buildings and things like that, there's paralysis and things like that. So it's important to get out quickly. You know, and this is one of our partners kind of, going across the rocks. This is also an interesting one. By donkey occasionally, we distribute these wheelchairs, whatever it takes to get them out to the people that need them in the very remotest places in the world. There's not always ramps or smooth pavement. You know, there's mud, and there's high stairs and things like that. So we're just really excited about our partners and the effort that they go through in distributing these wheelchairs to where they're most needed, because they are most needed in most of these places around the world. I want to talk just a minute about one of our partners, Metanoia Missions in Nicaragua. They are based in Managua on the western side, the Pacific side of the country. And a lot of the need for wheelchairs is in a place all the way across the country on the eastern coast, the Atlantic coast, called the Mosquito Coast, and specifically a town called Bilwi. This is where a lot of indigenous indigenous tribes live, and they often need to deliver wheelchairs there. And so we came across from them just an amazing story. And I'd love to share it with you, and we can share a link in the video of a video of this story. And so it's Alfonso and his father Octavio, and so they both live on the Mosquito Coast there, and they're divers, and they've taken up the tradition of their ancestors. You know, their ancestors going diving in boats more like this, but they dive for lobsters, and that's how they make their living. And they have to go to pretty deep waters and pretty great depths to get the lobsters on kind of small boats like this. But it's very dangerous. And one of the main reasons it's very dangerous is because, as anyone who's in the audience who knows who's a diver, if you come up too quickly, there is very serious risk of what they call the bends or decompression sickness. And unfortunately for Octavio and Alfonso, they were diving and came up too quickly, and they were in different boats, but this happened to them both at the same time on the same day, and they both came up too quickly. They knew pretty quickly that there was a problem. Sometimes it can take a little bit of time for them to figure out what's happening, and sometimes they get dizzy or they black out, but they knew there was a serious problem. The lobster divers off the coast of Nicaragua, they go to a bigger ship. There's a bigger ship, bigger than this one, where they deliver the lobsters, and that's where they get oxygen. And so they had to go to that ship. But they don't have the kind of equipment that you need to kind of treat decompression sickness. And that big boat only goes back to shore every 12 days. If they had been on day one, there's a good chance Alfonso and his dad, Octavio, might not have survived. They were on day 11, the big ship. And so they were able to make it back to shore, make it back to Bilwi, and this is actually just a sign here that shows the danger, for the divers so that they can see the dangers of coming up too quickly. But they were able to get them in Bilwi to a decompression chamber. It's one of only two in the entire country of Nicaragua. One of them happens to be, out of the two, one of them happens to be in the town right there offshore. And so they were able to save their lives. They were able to get them, conscious again. And unfortunately, though, there's paralysis is one of those potential outcomes for decompression sickness, and they did lose, lost the movement in their legs. So they did, experience paralysis. And again, both of them at the same time. And so as they tell this story, they get a little emotional, obviously, because, they ask questions like, why us? Why us and why both of us at the same time? And so our partners there, though, were able to get them wheelchairs fairly quickly after their accident, and gave them mobility. And as they described it, getting their legs back is the phrase that Octavio used when they received their wheelchair. Getting their lives back is another phrase that he used on receiving the wheelchair, giving them the opportunities that they thought would be lost by losing mobility. So just an amazing story of two really amazing gentlemen and their story of tragedy that turned into opportunities for them to now continue to do many of the things. Obviously, they won't be able to dive again, but at the same time, they are able to still do things. In fact, Octavio now is a vice president of the diving association there in the local community. And so part of what he's doing in terms of giving back is educating on the dangers, for the divers that are there who need to do this work because they need it to make a living. But he's now helping them to, understand some of the dangers. And he's just so thankful to our partner there, Met No Emissions and Free Wheelchair Mission, for those wheelchairs that were provided to he and his son has a family of his own now. And it's just an amazing story. And again, it was brought to us mainly by the guy on the left and another one or two other folks from the partner office there in Nicaragua, in Managua. So that's Moises on the left there. And just amazing story of them and how long it took them to get there and what it took to get the story. And so they had to actually travel 12 hours. And that was fast because it used to take 22 hours to get from Managua to this town. It took them 12 hours to get there. They actually, Alfonso, the son, now lives in another town. So they had to travel by water 4 hours to pick up Alfonso so that they could bring them both together again with their wheelchairs and tell the story. And so it was probably 32 hours total of travel for, and this is during COVID too. And actually Moises, I think he had some family who were suffering from COVID around the same time. And it was just a very, very challenging time for him. And we're just so grateful though, an amazing story of obviously what the transformation that happened, but what it took to get this just amazing story. Just, one or two other stories here to share. And I wish I could share so many of the transformation that happens, but this is Margaret in Kenya and our partner there, Walkabout Foundation. She experienced muscular dystrophy. She's living with muscular dystrophy, and over time just lost her mobility. And so she was actually not able to go to school, not able to help her family on their family farm. She received a wheelchair, and she's able to go back to school with her friends. And so if you watch the video, that's hopefully in the links there in the Slack channel, you can see a little bit more of her story. But she was just so thankful. And it's just, you can hear her singing, and it's just a really, really neat story and a really neat video of her being able to kind of work on our farm now and help out the family, go back to school, go back and meet up with her friends and play with her friends. And where, again, she was really kind of confined at home without a wheelchair. And they waited many years to get one. And again, this is the same story. Many, many times we hear it. It's days, weeks, months, again, sometimes years or even decades. We've heard stories of 20, 30 years before someone is able to get a wheelchair. So that's why we love your help. There's so many more who are in need, and we want to get more out there to those who need it. This is another story real quick from Lynn in Vietnam. She actually joined us here in person some years ago at an event we have called Miracle of Mobility, where she shared her story, and she went 27 years actually without a wheelchair. until she was 27 years old. And then we provided one through our partner there in Vietnam. And now, and she actually also from a donor got some sewing machines, and she started a sewing business. And so now she's providing back to her community because she has, she was able, her parents had to carry her everywhere. She had to crawl everywhere. But now because of the wheelchair, she actually started a sewing business. And believe it or not, during COVID, was providing masks through her sewing business to her local community. And so that's Lynn in Vietnam, and just an amazing story. And even more amazing is Lynn married a gentleman who also received a wheelchair from Free Wheelchair Mission. And excuse me, like I said, sometimes these hit me in the wrong way, or at the wrong time, I should say, in the right way at the wrong time. But now they have just a beautiful little girl. And so we're just so excited for Lynn and her family, and just the story of what happens, you know, because one of the things we like to do is we get those stories of kind of the immediacy of what happens right after they receive a wheelchair. But then there's what happens years later. And this is just a tremendous story of Lynn and what she was able to do to get work, you know, to be married and have a family. It's just an amazing story there with Lynn. And so so thankful to our programs team. One of the things that they do to collect this information from our partners, they have this thing called a wheelchair report, a container report. And so they collect it through electronic form. We also get it through Dropbox. That's how our partners deliver a lot of these photos. I want to give a props and shout out to a couple of guys on my team, Stephen and Ken, who manage the content that comes in for us, and just do a great job with that. And they use tools. So we do have some tools, but we want to make it better. And so we have these tools to and processes to request content from our programs team, our partners, to track the content that we're requesting from our photographers that we may hire, videographers we may hire. So we have some tools there. We use Smartsheet primarily. We also have some tools when we get the content in. Stephen does a great job of curating it and providing, you know, different tagging. And so, you know, there's I think it's called Face IQ, I want to say, from PhotoShelter is the AI that you now have to kind of do some automatic tagging and identification. And so Stephen is our Face IQ to some degree, and does a great job of that. But we want to do better, and that's why we're with PhotoShelter. And but you know, this is probably a familiar photo for anybody on the audience. You know, we have, you know, some stacks of these, and we have Dropbox, you know, lots of other places to store these things. Again, over 20 years, and so some of it might be on, you know, again, believe it or not, CDs and things like that. So, but we're really just so excited because we want to unlock the power of these stories and the visual storytelling. And so that's what we know PhotoShelter is going to be able to help us do, to get these and unlock this amazing information and photos and videos and stories that we have, so that those supporters can be transformed. Ambassadors, the press and media, internal team members, social media, all the places that we want to distribute it. We're really excited about having PhotoShelter help us to do that and unlock the power of transformation, the transformation that happens for those who receive our wheelchairs, and the transformation of those who are touched by those stories of transformation.
That's awesome. It actually segues really nicely into one of my questions that I had. So as evidenced by your presentation, Free Wheelchair Mission has innovated on the design and the scalability of your wheelchair designs. What innovation do you have plans for spreading the word of your organization's mission now that you have the power of PhotoShelter and some other tools at your disposal?
Yeah, Christine, that's a great question. Social media is a big one. We've definitely utilized that and grown our audience and try to create more content, more creative types of content, which include videos and polls and lots of different things and photos and more immediate type of content. Again, after Haiti, we were within hours, we had some content posted about that. So we're trying to use social media as a big one of our channels, and just all the distribution channels we have. We've changed to virtual on many of our things, including events. So, you know, like many organizations, we had to do that. We're kind of in a hybrid model right now, but we're looking for ways to reach people all around the country, and not just here in Southern California, which is a big part of where our base is, but expanding around the country through virtual, through digital communications. And so the digital media that we use is going to be really important. And so, we've really optimized the ways we use our technology. So whether it's digital technology, our CRM system that we have, some of the automations that we have in place, and just creatively telling the stories in new ways. We actually have VR, so we have a couple of VR movies. And again, we haven't been able to do in-person things, but we're actually going to do something up in Seattle later this month, in a couple of weeks, where we have some VR videos where you can actually look around and watch one of our recipients receive a wheelchair in a couple of different countries. So there's definitely different technology things that we're utilizing, and obviously PhotoShelter is going to be a big part of that, because again, the more we do in terms of the events and campaigns and videos, we need more content. And right now, again, frankly, a couple of reasons. One is because of the network that I talked about, but also just finding it and speed of finding it, and not just having Steven or Ken or one or two people on our team, but having that available to a much wider audience. And that's what PhotoShelter is going to be able to do. It's going to be able to index and archive all of those things, all of the content that we have, make it more accessible, because we need to do that where we're really scaling through digital.
That's awesome. And since you have a live active audience right now, how can our community of content creators get more involved with the free wheelchair mission if they are interested?
That's great. And we would love if you'd follow us on social media. We'd also love it because we do need photographers occasionally and videographers in different parts of the world. If you happen to travel in some of those countries I mentioned or other developing countries, hit me up. We do occasionally need help there. And as I mentioned too, we're also, if there's anybody else out who can provide some cameras, we would love that, because we would love to get some more, a little bit higher end, cameras for our network of partners out there. But just follow us on social media, and we'd love if you would share some of these stories that I shared today. We have many more that you see on social media and on our website. So we would love it if you could share some of our content on social media.